Welcome back to the channel. In this video we're going to be replacing the front and rear brake pads with EBC sintered brake pads. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need to do is take your brake reservoir cap off to allow for expansion when you push back the brake caliper pistons. Notice the large amount of dust drags. Don't underestimate the power of brake fluid on paintwork. So there's a little bit of liquid on top of the rubber cap. Now, with brake fluid being hygroscopic, it's possible this could be water. So this is the reason you change your brake fluid regularly. I'm just going to leave that there, not going to move it around. I'm just allowing that to come out. I don't need to take it out. Okay, so on the left hand side of the bike, be mindful of your ABS wire, so disconnect it to start with. When I say disconnected, what I mean is unhook it from the brake hose. Okay, so we can see on there's a little bit of corrosion. There's reasonable amounts of room left on the pads, but they have been squeaking a little bit, so I am going to change them. Okay, so I'm now going to just prise the pads open a little bit. Now, I wouldn't have too much bother just sticking a screwdriver in there and giving it a wiggle around, because I'm not going to reuse the pads. But if you are, maybe stick something like a bit of cardboard in first, then a nice wide screwdriver, and then give them a little prise open. I think you can actually get something for doing this, a brake piston spreader or something it's called. No, realistically, I should have given that a little spray first. So that we're not pushing the dirt back into the seals. Okay, so they are all the way back in. And to take these pads out is incredibly easy. Like I say, the only tool you might need apart from the torque wrench and the socket is maybe a screwdriver to push them out, but quite often you don't. Okay, so just pushing them out like that will do. A little bit of pressure, and out they come. Again, the same there. Just pushing them down slightly against the back spring. It should come in quite easily. There we go. I also like to take the spring out to clean it as well. Notice that the spring does have a arrow pointing up, so that's the way it goes, of course. Just bring it out that side. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that hanging. Some people moan about it. They say that it could be a problem. Don't braided hoses which are quite strong and it's not going to be there for long. Okay, so there's our brake pads. Brembo brake pads. The original ones that came with the bike, and the bike's done 11,500 miles. Okay, so the wear limit on a front brake pad is 1mm of thickness. I think it's 1.5 on the back. Okay, so we're just going to give this a little clean up. I'm going to be using a little bit of brake cleaner. Some people are very concerned about brake cleaners and rubbers. The only rubbers on these are set well inside the pistons. If you're a bit concerned about it, just use soapy water. What I'm going to do is use both. I'm going to use brake cleaner to get the majority of the muck off, and then a little bit of soapy water just to clean it up slightly. They're pretty clean anyway. You know, the bike is well maintained. Really doesn't need much more than that. I'll give it another wipe over when it goes on. Okay. So a quick look at the difference in the brake pads. So these are the new ones, EBC double H sintered brake pads or something. And the original Brembo ones. There was a lot of people, I was on a forum and they were insisting on buying the genuine Triumph brake pads. Well, they're Brembo brake pads, they're not Triumph. And I think these EBC ones, which are a good brake pad, I've used them before. I can't remember the cost, I will have a look. I think they were less than £15 each, or £15 a set. If you were to buy these off the Triumph website, and they would come as Brembo brakes, they are ridiculous. I'll check the price, I can't recall what they are. I'll pop it up on the screen. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the brake pads. You can see that they're slightly different. This one hasn't got any grooves in it. The grooves are there to indicate how much material is left. Now when it gets down to the groove, you're pretty much down to the limit. I've just measured these and there's over 2mm left on them. Remembering though that the brake pad doesn't come with much more than that to start with. I think I just measured these and I think it's 3.5mm of braking material. So it can sometimes look like you haven't got much left, but you'll be quite surprised. Okay, so I've cleaned up the caliper. Just going to pop the clip back in, remembering that little arrow upwards. And all you do is just push it into place like that. Okay, so we've got the clip in. Try to hold it in with your fingers. So, you know, that side there, just try to hold it down. It does tend to move around a little bit. Can be a little bit fiddly. It sometimes helps to just push it in with a screwdriver. Yeah, that's one in, quite simple. Same with the other one. The clip is kind of holding itself in place now. There's one pad in there, so that's always a little bit easier to get that one in. Cool, so that's pretty much it. Gently on. Notice the lack of copper grease. The only place I've put copper grease is on the thread of the bolts. Now, using a torque wrench if you can, because remember brakes are quite important. It is 55 Newton meters on the front brake calipers of this bike. Good. That is it, as simple as that. Remember to clip your ABS cable back on. And then once you've done the other side, you then pump the brakes. And of course checking the brake fluid level. Simple as that. Okay, and just repeat the other side. I'm not going to bother videoing that for you, it's exactly the same as this side. Onto the rear brakes. Okay, let's crack on with the back brakes. I like to take this chain guard off as it gives you better access to the bolts at the back. We can see in there a little bit better now. Okay, so these are the new pins that I bought, because like I say, last time I did this, I think I mashed the end of this slightly, which can tend to happen if you use cheap bits. Now, these are quite nice ones. The only thing I would say is when you're trying to get them in and out, now you might have a different sort of method for doing yours, but I find this won't go all the way into that nicely, because this body hits up against the brake caliper. So I think the best thing to do, so let's imagine this pin is on the bike, is just to push that in and then just pop that on the end and then work it from there. If you try to push it all the way in, you won't get that far, and what will happen then, this is just barely grabbing the outside, and it tends to mash the end. Like I say, before you take the caliper off, it's easier to just loosen the pins off slightly. So I'll put that in first. I hope you can see. Oops, my light's gone. Okay, so I hope you can see that. So I'm just going to pop this in first. Yeah, that one's a bit mashed. Let's do this one first. And then put your ratchet on as best you can. That didn't feel, yeah, it did go. Good. So put that one in. Chain's a bit of a pain in the ass on this. Okay, here's a little bit of an extension bar. I can see that one just turning. I have to try and hit this in with a bit of a hammer. Anyway, I can see that one going in. So hopefully this time it'll grip. Cool, excellent. So you can see a little bit of crud on there. And this doesn't want to come out. There we go. There we go. So I'll just leave it like that for a minute. Okay, and now we need a 14mm socket. There we go. And there's one just here, if I can get to it. That's a bit snug. Okay, let's just try this. So just put this little extender onto that, which will then go onto there, which might push it out enough, but not so far that it's hitting the sprocket. That's good. Obviously, I've got the leverage now. There it goes. Good. A bit more awkward because of its restriction, of course. Again, being careful of your ABS cable. There we go. A bit more rusty on this side. Just going to take the pins out first because I don't want to push all that rust back in. One. Okay, a little bit dry. There is a little bit of copper grease on the pin, which I tend to do on the back brakes. Okay, so the pad should come out quite easily now. There we go. Okay, so Nissin brakes on the back, I think, and of course Nissin pads. Quite grubby looking, lots of life in them. A minimum depth of 1.5 mil on the back, I think. Okay, again, little slider pin which is going to be cleaned up. Just going to clean this up before I push it back into the bore. 7.06 minus the back in. 3.2. So about 4 mil roughly. It's plenty of life. Like I say, they're looking a bit scabby. Okay, so we're not going to bother cleaning up the pin. If I did, I'd put it on the wire wheel. We're just going to clean up this little clip. Not looking in bad condition. Kind of wish I bought another one of these as well. Don't look too bad. I might put a little bit of copper grease on there. And the sliding pin. Okay, so we've got everything reasonably well cleaned up. Like I say, it's a bit more rusty in there. It is suffering being on the back of the bike. I'm going to give it a little spray down with GT85, just the entire area. Some people might be horrified that I'm using that kind of lubricating spray in the area of the brakes. So it's nowhere near the disc, it's nowhere near the pads. It's just to help with sort of protection. Just to help clean it all up, you know. In my opinion, and of course it is my opinion, it's quite safe to use. Just to help it from future corrosion. Okay, look okay. Like I say, I'm not a massive fan of copper grease on brakes, but I am going to put a little bit on this. I can't remember how it sits. That way in. Or was it the other way? Can't remember. Good, so it doesn't sit that way, it sits that way. Right, so literally I'm going to rub a tiny amount on the surfaces. Just a little bit on here as well. Okay, worth getting your pins kind of in ready. Again, a tiny smear of copper grease on those. Trying to make sure you don't get copper grease, of course, on the surfaces. If you do, make sure you wipe it off. Okay, this is the one that goes onto that and then just slides down. You're going to do these up lightly and then torque them when the caliper's in position. Okay, so this nut is 40 Newton meters. I'm struggling to get a socket on there. Let's give it a try. Oh, that's okay, good. And the same on this one. Okay, so the pins are 18 Newton meters. Remembering to put your hex nut on first. Okay, remembering again now to pump your brakes, remember. And on all the discs, just give them a little clean with some brake cleaner, just in case you've got any grease or anything on there. Cool. Okay, that is it. 2 sets of brakes done, front and back. Just quickly before we finish the video, I want to chat about the test drive I took the bike on to bed the brakes in. Now when I'd done the front brake change, I pulled the lever on the front to bed the or to push the pistons back into place, and I noticed a funny clicking noise once or twice, which I didn't think much of. I just pulled the lever a little bit harder and it stopped. Now when I was riding the bike, I did notice it was a bit more noise coming from the front rotors than normally there would be. Now I just put this down to a difference in brake pad, but then when I braked a little bit heavier, it was a little bit more noisy. So I got back and I took the brakes apart, and I couldn't see anything untoward going on there, but the clicking from the brake lever when I pulled that originally sort of worried me a touch. The only thing I can think of, I couldn't see anything obvious in there, but maybe when I put the pads in, maybe one of them was put in a little bit crooked, and it was maybe binding on or sticking on ever so slightly. Now I've never had that happen before, so if something doesn't feel right, just go over it again, check it again. Now it's fine, everything's good. So in the next video I'll be bleeding the brakes front and back, and I'll be using dealer tool to purge the ABS system. Thanks for watching, like, share and subscribe.